Somebody call animal control. I think a giant hippo escaped. Garrett Whitmore III's voice carried easily across the south lawn, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. That was exactly what he wanted. Terence Cole stopped walking, the folder tucked beneath his arm, the one containing his engineering job offer, the paperwork tied to his entire future, pressed against his ribs. He slowly turned around. Blake Harlan was already coming toward him, cracking his knuckles. "You lost, big guy. The buffet is off campus," Blake said as he stepped directly into Terence's path. His eyes briefly dropped toward Terence's hands, which hung loosely at his sides. Neither Blake nor Garrett understood that those same hands had finished every wrestling season undefeated for 3 consecutive years. Before continuing, comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from. And make sure you subscribe, because the next story is one you won't want to miss. Terence Cole had one job: get his transcripts, get his diploma paperwork, leave. That was it. That was the entire plan. I had not returned to Caldwell University for memories. I was not interested in reunions, handshakes, or wandering across the quad for nostalgia's sake. He had spent 4 years at Caldwell, doing exactly what he had come there to do. Now he was finished. The university could keep its brick buildings, manicured lawns, and carefully polished reputation. Terence needed one sealed envelope. Then he intended to leave for good. He parked his old Honda Civic in the visitor lot. Visitor, because that was what he was now. He shut off the engine and remained behind the wheel for a moment. The campus looked exactly as he remembered it. The same red brick buildings, the same enormous oak trees dropping leaves across the stone walkways, the same Sigma Alpha, Kappa Fraternity house, sitting proudly at the edge of the quad as though it owned the entire university. And depending on how someone looked at things, perhaps it did. Terence pushed the thought aside. He reached across the passenger seat and picked up his folder. Inside were his state-issued identification, a printed confirmation from the registrar's office, and a letter from Keller and Associates, an engineering firm in Atlanta that had offered him a real job. A good job, the kind of job that had made his mother cry when he called her with the news. The letter stated that his start date was 6 weeks away. It also said the company needed sealed official transcripts and a copy of his diploma before his first day. 6 weeks, more than enough time. Terence tucked the folder beneath his arm and stepped out of the car. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and approaching winter. Students crossed the quad in groups, carrying backpacks and coffee cups, while the familiar low hum of campus life surrounded them. Nobody paid attention to Terence. I was simply a broad-shouldered black man in a navy jacket, walking with purpose, invisible in the best possible way. He preferred it like that. The registrar's office was located on the first floor of Harmon Hall. Terence remembered the route instinctively, the same way a person remembered the layout of the house where he had grown up. He walked through the glass doors, found the line, and waited. For 22 minutes. He counted, because that was simply the kind of person Terence was. He did not tap his foot impatiently. He did not check his phone every few seconds. He stood quietly with the folder under his arm. Eventually, he reached the service window. The clerk behind the counter was a tired-looking woman with reading glasses pushed onto her forehead. Her name tag read Marjorie Kent. She typed something into the computer, frowned, typed again. Her frown deepened. Terence felt the first small knot forming inside his stomach. "Mr. Cole," Mrs. Kent said without looking up, "there's a hold on your academic records." "I'm sorry?" "Administrative hold." She narrowed her eyes at the screen. "From the Office of Student Conduct." The knot tightened. "There must be some mistake. It says the hold is precautionary, pending resolution of a conduct matter." Terence placed his folder very carefully on the counter. The way a man placed something down when he needed both hands to remain completely still. 4 years. Auseinheit GPA. Varsity wrestling. Not one disciplinary warning. Not one complaint. Not one email, letter, meeting, or conversation involving misconduct during his entire time at Caldwell University. What conduct matter? He asked. Mrs. Kent looked genuinely uncomfortable. I can't see the details from this system. You'll need to speak with the Dean of Students' office. She slid a sticky note across the counter. Dean Everett Langley handles those cases. Terence stared at the note. Then he picked it up, folded it, slipped it into his pocket. Thank you. His voice remained flat, polite, controlled. He picked up his folder and walked through the glass doors in to the cool morning air. The knot remained inside his stomach, quiet, tight. Like a warning, he did not yet have enough information to understand. He stopped on the front steps and pulled out his phone. He scrolled until he found a name he had not called for several months. Dr. Camille Prescott, his former engineering professor, the one faculty member at Caldwell, whom Terence trusted without hesitation. She did not answer. He waited for voicemail. Dr. Prescott, it's Terence Cole. I'm on campus. There's a hold on my records, and I don't understand why. I could use your guidance when you have a moment. He ended the call, pocketed his phone, set his jaw, and headed toward the Dean of Students' building. He still believed he had plenty of time to fix the problem. I was certain of it. I was wrong. The Dean of Students' building stood on the opposite side of the quad. Terence walked with his head raised and the folder pressed firmly beneath his arm, while mentally preparing what he would say. He would remain polite. He would explain clearly. Obviously, this was some administrative error. He would show them his academic and disciplinary record. They would correct it. Simple, straightforward, finished. I was halfway across the quad when something struck the back of his head, a plastic cup, thrown from his left. It hit hard enough to sting. The cup bounced across the stone walkway, spilling beer behind it. Terence stopped. For one long second, he stood perfectly still. Then he turned. The Sigma Alpha Kappa fraternity house stood nearby. Its broad front steps were crowded with students. Pledges wearing matching shirts, young women holding coffee cups. And in the middle of everything stood 3 young men who looked as though they had been waiting for this exact moment. Terence immediately recognized the type. He had encountered men like them countless times. The first was large, thick neck, linebacker shoulders, the kind of man who had been the biggest person in every room throughout his life and had never been forced to consider what that privilege meant. I was already laughing. Blake Harlan. The man standing in the center was more dangerous. Terence knew immediately because he was not laughing. Garrett Whitmore III simply watched him, arms crossed, one corner of his mouth slightly lifted. Terence looked like nothing more than a mildly entertaining animal that had wandered onto Garrett's property. Calm, effortless cruelty. The third young man already had his phone raised. Recording. Reed Ellison. And somehow Reed's smile was the worst of the 3, because his was the smile of someone who understood exactly what he was doing. "My bad, big guy," Blake shouted across the quad. His voice carried easily. He did not sound sorry. "Didn't see you there." He paused deliberately. "You kind of blend into the landscape, you know? Like a landmark." The fraternity pledges laughed immediately. The nervous laughter of young men, terrified of refusing to laugh with the person controlling the room. Terence looked at Blake, then Garrett, then Reed's phone. I knew exactly what this was. I had seen the same performance in gyms, locker rooms, hallways, and countless other places where young men like these decided that someone like him was acceptable entertainment. They wanted a reaction. Something angry, something ugly, something Reed could edit post and spread before Terrence even reached his car. Terrence thought about the folder beneath his arm. The Keller and Associates offer. 6 weeks. He bent down, picked up the plastic cup, dropped it into a nearby trash container. Then he turned and continued toward the administrative building. Behind him, Garrett's voice came smoothly across the quad. "Look at that." A pause. "It's self-cleaning." The laughter became louder. Terrence continued walking. His jaw tightened. His eyes remained forward. Every step became a decision. Every step represented him choosing the folder beneath his arm, instead of the fire burning quietly inside his chest. He did not look back. What he could not see was Reed already typing. The video clip began uploading before Terrence even reached the trash can. It showed the cup hitting the back of Terrence's head, and then followed his broad, silent figure walking away. Reed had always considered himself good at captions. Quad Wildlife Alert. He pressed post, then turned the screen toward Garrett. Garrett read it. The corner of his mouth lifted. "Good one." Terrence pushed through the administrative building's doors and allowed the heavy glass to close behind him. The lobby felt cool and quiet. Fluorescent lighting, bulletin boards covered with notices. A student employee behind the front desk wearing headphones around his neck. Everything ordinary, everything safe. Terrence stood there briefly and allowed the tightness inside his chest to settle. He had not reacted. He had refused to give them what they wanted. He had made the correct decision. He straightened his jacket, adjusted the folder beneath his arm, and approached the reception desk. He had no idea that the video Reed posted was already collecting reactions and spreading quickly. The Dean of Students' reception desk was staffed by another administrator, middle-aged, reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain, a coffee mug beside her keyboard that read, "World's Okayest Administrator." She had the look of someone who had delivered disappointing news so many times that it no longer felt disappointing to her. Terrence gave his name. "I need to speak with Dean Langley. There's a hold on my records. I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. I never had a conduct issue during my 4 years here, so I believe there's probably been a clerical mistake." The administrator typed into her computer, looked at the screen, typed again. "Dean Langley is unavailable for the next couple of days." Terrence blinked. "I drove 2 hours to come here." She looked over the top of her glasses with the expression of someone who had heard some version of that sentence hundreds of times. "I understand, but his schedule is full. The earliest appointment I can give you is later this week." Terrence inhaled slowly through his nose, then exhaled. "Can you at least tell me why there's a hold? What conduct matter is involved?" She turned toward her monitor, clicked something. A small line appeared between her eyebrows. Terrence understood from her expression that whatever she was reading was not good. "It shows a complaint filed before you graduated," she said carefully. "From the Office of Student Conduct." She paused. "It's listed as an anonymous complaint, alleging a pattern of intimidation." The words hit Terrence like stones dropped into still water. Anonymous. Pattern of intimidation. He stood at the counter and forced his face to remain completely neutral. One of the hardest things he had done all day. Who filed it? University policy allows anonymous complaints. The complainant's identity is protected. What specifically am I accused of? What incident? She looked again. Longer this time. Almost as though additional information might appear if she stared hard enough. It did not. The complaint doesn't identify specific incidents. Terrence lowered his folder onto the counter. He opened it, removed the Keller and Associates acceptance letter, placed it carefully where she could read it. The company letterhead, the engineering position, the start date he had circled in blue ink during the excitement of receiving the offer. "I have a job waiting for me," Terrence said quietly. "They need my transcripts before I start. I graduated with a 3. I was a 4-year varsity athlete. I was never called into a disciplinary office once during my entire time here. He tapped the letter gently, and someone filed an anonymous complaint against me. No specific event, no identifying details, and now my academic records are frozen. The administrator looked down at the letter, then at Terrence. For one brief and honest moment, something moved behind her eyes. Recognition, as though she understood exactly what might be happening, and exactly how powerless she was to change it from behind that desk. Then her professional expression returned. "I'll schedule your meeting with Dean Langley. You'll need to speak with him directly." Terrence placed the letter back inside the folder, closed it. "Thank you." I gave her his phone number, turned, and left. I needed air. He needed to think. And there was only one person on campus whose judgment he trusted enough to seek immediately. The wrestling facility stood about a 10-minute walk away near the athletic complex. Terrence had walked that route hundreds of times, before sunrise, late at night, after victories, after losses. His legs remembered the way without conscious thought. I took out his phone, called. Coach Warren Bishop answered quickly. Terrence Cole. The familiar low rumble of Coach Bishop's voice immediately transported Terrence back to wrestling matches when his lungs burned and his legs had nothing left. "I was wondering when you'd call." Terrence slowed. "You knew I was here. Saw your car in the visitor lot." A short pause. "Wondered how long it would take before you came looking for me." "There's a hold on my records," Terrence said. "Anonymous complaint. No specifics. No name. Filed shortly before I graduated." The silence on the other end lasted just long enough. Terrence understood. Coach Bishop was not surprised. "Come to my office." I did not say everything would be fine. That told Terrence almost everything he needed to know. Coach Bishop's office smelled of old leather and liniment. Championship photographs covered the walls, frames organized by season, some dated from before Terrence had even been born. Terrence appeared in 4 of them, heavyweight, arm raised, the face of a younger man who had not yet learned all the quiet ways an institution could work against someone. Now Coach Bishop sat across from him, elbows on the desk. He told Terrence what he had heard through faculty channels. The anonymous complaint had been filed several weeks before graduation. It had been vague by design. Pattern of intimidation was language almost impossible to disprove precisely, because nobody could pin it to anything specific. No dates meant no alibi. No identified complainant meant nobody Terrence could confront. No incident meant no factual defense. "It's a ghost," Coach Bishop said, "designed to follow you out the door." Terrence stared at the desk. Who would do that? Coach Bishop did not answer. I did not need to. They both understood that people existed at Caldwell University, with enough connections and motivation to use exactly this kind of complaint against exactly this kind of student. A student who had earned his position without anyone handing it to him. A student whose grades and championships proved that. Terrence eventually left the wrestling facility without answers, and with an appointment he wished he did not need. He crossed the South Quad toward the visitor parking lot, head raised, folder under his arm. All he wanted now was to get inside his car, get on the highway, put Caldwell University behind him. I was approaching the parking lot when a fraternity pledge stepped directly into his path. The kid looked about 18, soft face, fresh Sigma Alpha Kappa shirt that still showed fold marks. He looked terrified, not of Terrence, of whatever would happen if he returned to the fraternity empty-handed. "Hey, Sigma Alpha Kappa wants to invite you to—" A voice cut across the lawn. "Bring him over." Garrett Whitmore stood in the center of a loose crowd of fraternity members and pledges, hands in his pockets, completely relaxed, like a man standing on property he believed belonged to him. Let's see if the big guy can actually move. Laughter rolled through the crowd. Blake Harlan was already walking forward, rolling his neck like someone warming up for a fight. Reed Ellison had his phone raised. Of course he did. Reed always had his phone ready, already framing the scene. Terrence stopped. He looked at the pledge, then Garrett, then at the roughly 30 students standing in a semicircle, waiting for entertainment. He thought about his folder, the Keller letter, his mother's voice when he had read the engineering position to her. He thought about 4 years of keeping his head down, 4 years of maintaining a clean record. He thought about the anonymous complaint sitting inside his file like a stone. Someone had placed there while he was not looking. Terrence made his decision. He turned away. Then Blake punched him. Not a shove, a closed fist. Hard, sudden. The blow struck Terrence across the left cheekbone from behind. His head snapped sideways. A burst of white-hot pain shot through his jaw. His folder dropped. Documents scattered across the grass. The crowd exploded. Someone cheered. Terrence slowly straightened. He touched his cheekbone with 2 fingers. Heat was already spreading beneath the skin. Then he turned. Blake stood directly in front of him, fist still raised, chest pushed outward, grinning toward the crowd as though he had scored a winning touchdown. "What are you going to do, big guy?" Blake shouted. "Huh? What are you going to do?" Another fraternity member rushed from Terrence's right and grabbed his jacket. He yanked it hard, trying to throw Terrence off balance. Terrence looked at Blake's grin, then at the hand gripping his jacket, then at Garrett standing across the lawn watching, then at Reed's phone pointing directly toward him. They had made their choice. Now Terrence made his. Everything that followed took 11 seconds. Terrence caught Blake's lead leg. The takedown was so clean and so fast. The 2 witnesses later said it looked like a movie had skipped a frame. One moment, Blake was standing. The next, he was face down on the grass with his arms secured safely behind him, completely controlled. The second fraternity member still had a fistful of Terrence's jacket. Terrence pivoted smoothly, used his hips, and sent the man onto the grass with the exact amount of force required. No more. Garrett was already coming forward. Instinct, disbelief, his calm expression finally cracking. Terrence closed the distance in 2 steps, swept to Garrett's base, and suddenly Garrett Whitmore III was flat on his back staring at the open sky without understanding how he had gotten there. Terrence stood over him. His cheeks still throbbed. I was not breathing hard. 4-year varsity heavyweight, Terrence said quietly. 2 conference championships. He looked at Garrett. I ate lunch on this campus for 4 years. You never noticed me once. Then Terrence reached down and helped Garrett stand, because Terrence was not a bully. He had never been one. I had not thrown the first punch. He had not thrown any punch. In 11 seconds, he had simply made 3 young men understand exactly who they had chosen to put their hands on. Terrence collected his folder, gathered the papers scattered across the grass, then walked toward his car. Behind him, the entire quad had become silent. Dozens of witnesses stood frozen, staring. Reed's phone lay face up on the grass. At some point during those 11 seconds, he had dropped it. Terrence did not look back. Before long, several separate videos of the confrontation were everywhere. Different angles, different phones, different students who had understood quickly enough to press record. Within hours, the clips had spread through virtually every campus social media account that mattered. Terrence sat at the small desk in his apartment, watching the story unfold in real time. His phone kept buzzing. Most messages came from Nia Okafor, a Nigerian-American senior. Terrence knew from late-night thermodynamics study sessions during her first year. Nia was sharp, practical, and had always been brutally straightforward with him. She was being straightforward now. Her messages arrived like commentary from a sports broadcaster. Terrence, 4 videos. You're everywhere. Someone found your conference championship records. People are losing their minds. The SAK harassment posts are getting buried. Completely buried. Your former teammates are posting tributes. Coach Bishop's assistant reposted something. Terrence read every message without responding. He held a bag of frozen peas against his swollen cheek. The campus reaction had become almost celebratory. Students who remembered Terrence as a quiet, decent upperclassman defended him loudly. Former teammates uploaded footage from his championship matches. Current wrestlers flooded the comments. The cruel wildlife posts Reed and his fraternity brothers had created were being swallowed by a wave of counterposts none of them had expected. For the first time that day, something inside Terrence's chest loosened slightly. He called his mother. Nadine Cole answered quickly, as she always did, as though she had been sitting beside the phone waiting for him. Terrence did not tell her everything. Not the cup, not the anonymous complaint, not the punch that had struck his face and sent his papers flying across the lawn. He simply told her he had returned to Caldwell, that things had become complicated, but that he was handling it. She listened the way she always listened, completely, without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Baby," she said softly, "you sound like your daddy used to sound after he won something." Terrence smiled. The first time he had smiled all day. "Get some sleep," she told him. I did. Better than he had any right to expect. Then an official university email arrived the following morning. Terrence sat up in bed. The message came from Caldwell University's legal counsel. He read it quickly the first time, the way someone reads bad news, when instinct already tells him what it says. Then he read it more slowly. I had not misunderstood. Sigma Alpha Kappa, represented by outside counsel, had filed a formal assault complaint against Terrence Cole, based on the South Quad confrontation. In response, and under the university's alumni conduct policy, the Office of Student Conduct had placed a second administrative hold on his academic records, combined with the anonymous complaint already on file. The university would not release Terrence's transcripts or diploma documentation until a formal investigation had been completed. Estimated investigation period, 60 to 90 days. Terrence placed the phone face down on his nightstand. He sat on the edge of his bed in the gray light and stared toward the wall. Across the room, the Keller and Associates offer remained visible inside the open folder. Clean white paper, black lettering, the employment date printed near the bottom. 6 weeks. Terrence picked up the phone again. Read the investigation estimate. 60 to 90 days. 60 to 90 days because of a complaint filed by the same group that had thrown a cup at his head, punched him in the face, grabbed his jacket, attempted to knock him down, then filmed his response. His jaw tightened. He called Dr. Camille Prescott again. This time, she answered. "Terrence." Her voice was alert, calm, as though she had expected the call. "I saw the videos. Tell me everything from the beginning. Leave nothing out." Terrence leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, and began talking. When the meeting with Dean Langley finally came, Terrence dressed carefully. Dark slacks, button-down shirt, his best shoes. Not because he wanted to impress the dean, because his father had taught him something. When a system tried to make you look small, you entered the room looking exactly like who you were. Prescott met Terrence outside the Dean of Students' office. She was sharply dressed, blazer, reading glasses on her face instead of resting on her head, leather portfolio beneath one arm. She had already briefed Terrence on what to expect. He had listened to every word. Before he reached the office door, she stopped him. "Remember," she said quietly, They're going to sound reasonable. They'll nod. They'll listen. They'll use words like fairness and process. Don't let the language fool you. She looked directly into his eyes. You know what happened on that lawn. Do not let them rewrite it. Terence nodded once. I'll be right here, she said. He opened the door and entered alone. Dean Everett Langley sat behind his desk, silver-haired, tanned, expensive suit. He possessed the practiced warmth of a man who had delivered bad news to hundreds of students and had spent decades learning how to make it sound like a favor. Beside him sat a younger man wearing a gray suit. He introduced himself only as representing University Legal Counsel. No personal name, only a title, only a suit. Terence. Dean Langley gestured toward the chair opposite him. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Terence sat. The folder rested on his knee. His hands remained still. Langley folded his hands on the desk. I want you to understand that this office takes every conduct complaint seriously. We are committed to a fair and thorough process for everyone involved. Everyone. Terence remembered the word. I want to see the complaint, he said, and whatever evidence was submitted against me. Langley nodded toward University Counsel. The attorney pushed one printed sheet across the desk. Terence looked down. His stomach turned cold. It was a still image taken from a video. The image showed Terence standing over Garrett Whitmore on the lawn. Nothing else. One frozen moment. Everything that had happened beforehand had disappeared. There is also a short video segment submitted by the complainant's attorney, Langley said. The university attorney rotated a laptop toward Terence. The clip began. It lasted only seconds. Blake was already on the ground when the video started. It showed Terence moving toward Garrett. The punch to Terence's cheek was gone. The fraternity member grabbing his jacket was gone. Everything the others had done first had been carefully removed. What remained looked like an unprovoked attack. Terence continued staring at the screen after the video ended. That video has been edited. It's been cut. There are witnesses who recorded the entire confrontation. There are multiple unedited videos already public. You can see exactly what happened before that clip starts. Langley nodded with the patient expression of someone who had already decided where the meeting was going. We are reviewing all available materials. However, the complaint before us specifically concerns physical contact. I was punched in the face first, Terence said. His voice remained level. There are witnesses. There are 4 unedited recordings. I was hit in the face. Someone grabbed my jacket. I was physically attacked before I responded. We understand your account, the attorney said smoothly. However, the university's alumni conduct policy. What alumni conduct policy? Terence asked. The attorney opened another folder. He read language Terence had never seen. A clause buried in a student handbook nobody had ever directed him to. Graduates remained subject to university conduct proceedings for incidents occurring on campus for 1 year after graduation. 1 year. An obscure clause almost no graduate knew existed. Then came the part that hit hardest. Dean Langley leaned slightly forward. His voice softened, almost gentle, which somehow made the words worse. Terence, I want to be completely transparent. If the investigation results in a formal finding of misconduct, that finding could be noted on your official academic transcript if requested by an employer. The room became silent. A transcript notation, permanent, something that could appear during background checks, something that could follow him into job interview, after job interview, for the rest of his professional life. Terence sat completely still. Langley clasped his hands together. Our investigation will likely require 60 to 90 days. We'll contact you. Terence picked up his folder, stood, then shook Dean Langley's hand. Firm, brief. Because his mother had raised him with manners, Terence refused to surrender, no matter who stood across from him. He walked into the hallway. Prescott looked at his face. She said nothing. She simply opened the stairwell door. Together, they walked downstairs in silence. They continued until they were outside in the cold air and far enough from the building that nobody could hear them. Then, Terence told her everything. Dr. Prescott's office in the engineering building was small, packed with years of accumulated purpose. Student files, engineering journals, a whiteboard filled with diagrams she had not yet erased, one framed photograph on her desk. Through the window, the eastern side of campus was visible. The Sigma Alpha Kappa house stood in the distance, its white columns bright against the gray sky. Prescott did not look toward it. She sat across from Terence and listened. Every detail about the meeting with Langley. She did not interrupt. She did not react dramatically. She simply listened with the focused stillness of someone who had spent years gathering information about Caldwell University. Someone who understood that details always mattered. When Terence finished, Dr. Prescott remained quiet. Then she opened a desk drawer, removed a manila folder, slim, but packed densely with documents and colored tabs. She placed it carefully between them. I've been building this for 4 years, waiting for the right case. Terence looked down, then back at her. What is it? Every Sigma Alpha Kappa conduct complaint handled by Langley's office since I joined this faculty. She opened the folder. 7 complaints, 7 dismissals, every one. Terence leaned forward. The first page contained a name he did not recognize. Complaint information. Dismissal information. A short summary written in careful administrative language. But reading between the lines, Terence understood. Targeted harassment. Look at the complainants, Dr. Prescott said. Terence moved through the pages. A black student. An international student from West Africa. A student with a documented disability. 2 more black students. A Latina student. Another international student. 7 complaints. 7 different people. 1 common thread. Now, look at the page attached to each complaint, Dr. Prescott said. Terence did. Each case had a copy of an entry from the university's public financial filings. Donation information. Donor. Amount. The same donor name appeared every time. Whitmore Family Foundation. Terence studied the numbers, then the timing. He compared the donation records with the complaint dismissals. Dr. Prescott did not need to explain. The pattern was obvious. Each complaint had been dismissed within weeks, sometimes days, of a Whitmore Family Foundation donation entering university accounts. The smallest donation was $180,000. The largest was $2.3 million. That enormous donation had arrived during the same period when 2 complaints were dismissed almost simultaneously. Terence leaned back. Langley isn't just incompetent. No. Prescott replied. I isn't. And Garrett's father? His money is literally inside Caldwell's buildings. The new athletic center bears the Whitmore family name. She paused. There's something else you need to know about Garrett. She turned to the final page. He's pre-law. He's currently interning with his father's law firm. That firm provides ongoing legal services to Caldwell University. Terence stared at the page. The entire structure began connecting in his mind, like an engineering diagram. One support feeding, another, until the entire load-bearing system became visible. Garrett's father funded buildings. His law firm advised the university. Dean Langley dismissed complaints involving Garrett's fraternity. An anonymous conduct complaint was placed into Terence's file before graduation. Now, an edited video sat in a formal misconduct proceeding, while several complete recordings circulated publicly. This was not simply 3 entitled fraternity members behaving badly. This was a system, carefully constructed, operating exactly as designed. And Terence had walked into the middle of it. "What do we do?" he asked. Prescott folded her hands. "We find someone who kept his own records." She reached for her phone. "I need you to meet someone." She called Nia Okafor. "Nia, are you near the engineering building?" A pause. Then Nia's voice came quickly through the phone. "I'm literally outside. I was going to call you. I found something. His name is Adrian Morales. He left Caldwell 2 years ago. I contacted him." Dr. Prescott looked across the desk at Terence. "Come upstairs," she told Nia. "Now." Nia entered Dr. Prescott's office like she had been running. She probably had. Her laptop bag was partly open, her natural hair slightly wind-blown. She carried the electric focus of someone who had been sitting on critical information and could barely wait to release it. She opened her laptop, pulled up an email, turned the screen toward Terence. He responded. "His name is Adrian Morales. I was a pre-med student here. He filed a harassment complaint against Sigma Alpha Kappa. Langley dismissed it." She paused. "He transferred to Ohio 3 weeks later." Terence read the email. Short, measured, written by someone who had learned to choose every word carefully. "I've been waiting for this message for 2 years. I kept everything. Call me when you're ready." Prescott pulled her chair closer. "Call him now." Nia opened a video call. The connection went through quickly. Adrian Morales appeared on the screen. 26, broad shoulders, sitting at a desk inside what looked like a small apartment in Ohio, and wore a collared shirt. He looked like a man who had dressed intentionally for the conversation. Behind him stood a bookshelf filled with thick medical textbooks. On the top shelf was a cardboard banker's box secured with a rubber band. "Dr. Prescott," Adrian said. He nodded, then looked at Terence and Nia. "I'm glad you called." "Tell us what happened," Dr. Prescott said. "From the beginning." Adrian began. The harassment had started during his sophomore year. Sigma Alpha Kappa targeted him the way they often targeted people, casually at first, as though everything were a joke he was expected to laugh at. Social media post, comments. Then it escalated. An entire semester of targeted harassment. Posts naming Adrian directly. Physical intimidation on campus. Notes left on his dorm room door. Adrian filed a formal written complaint. Signed, documented. Dates, specific incidents. Langley's office acknowledged the complaint, then scheduled mediation, then delayed it, and delayed it again. By the time mediation actually happened, months had passed. Adrian's voice remained steady, practiced, the voice of someone who had repeated the story enough times alone that the anger had compressed into something harder, quieter. Garrett came with an attorney. I had a student equity advocate, a sophomore who had never participated in a mediation before. The entire thing lasted about 40 minutes. Langley dismissed my complaint 2 weeks later. "What reason did they give?" Terence asked. "Insufficient evidence." Adrian spoke the phrase like someone reading a line he had memorized, even though I submitted screenshots, witness statements, and a written incident log covering months. Nia leaned forward. "When exactly was the complaint dismissed?" Adrian gave her the date. Nia immediately opened the Whitmore Family Foundation donation records. She compared the information. Her jaw tightened. A $400,000 Whitmore Family Foundation pledge was recorded 11 days before your complaint was dismissed. The room went silent. Adrian slowly nodded. "I know. I found the financial record several months after I transferred. I was sitting in Ohio, trying to understand what had happened." He looked directly into the camera. "That's when I realized it wasn't incompetence. It was a transaction. You said you kept everything," Dr. Prescott said. Adrian turned around, reached toward the bookshelf, removed the banker's box, placed it on the desk, pulled off the rubber band, a journal. He began listing its contents, entries for every day of the entire semester, dates, times, exact words, screenshots of every social media post before they deleted them, text messages from 2 fraternity members who didn't know I was saving everything, the complete unedited audio recording of the mediation. Then he held up one final document, a printed financial record, the Whitmore donation information pulled directly from public university filings. Adrian looked steadily at the camera. My grandfather told me something when I was young. He said, "When powerful people lie about you, the truth doesn't fight back by itself. You have to give it a voice, and you have to give it receipts." Adrian paused. I kept every receipt. Before the video call ended, he emailed his complete records to Dr. Prescott. After the screen went dark, the 4 of them sat silently inside her office. The only sound came from the heating unit in the wall. Outside the window, the Sigma Alpha Kappa house stood illuminated against the night. Prescott finally spoke. This isn't a fraternity problem anymore. This is a documented institutional conspiracy. And now we have the receipts. She looked at Terrence. Who do we take this to? Terrence answered without hesitation. Everyone. So, Dr. Prescott contacted Vanessa Carlisle. Vanessa was a higher education reporter for the state's largest newspaper. 12 years covering universities, sharp as a surgical blade. She had been watching the Caldwell Sigma Alpha Kappa story for 2 years, but never had enough documented evidence to publish. Sources inside the university occasionally gave her fragments, rumors, suggestions that something deeply wrong existed beneath the surface. But newspapers could not print rumors. Evidence was different. "I have your entry point," Dr. Prescott told her. "Come to campus." Vanessa cleared her schedule. Their meeting lasted 4 hours. Terrence, Dr. Prescott, Nia, Adrian appearing on a laptop screen. Vanessa sat opposite them, with a recorder and legal pad. Her attention never wandered. They walked her through everything. The harassment recordings. The edited video submitted to Dean Langley compared directly with the unedited originals. Dr. Prescott's record of 7 complaints and 7 dismissals. The corresponding Whitmore Family Foundation contributions. Adrian's documentation. His journal. Screenshots. Mediation recording. Financial records. The anonymous complaint placed in Terrence's file shortly before graduation. The threat of a permanent transcript notation. Vanessa asked difficult questions the entire time. Precise, uncomfortable. She assumed nothing. Every assertion had to be supported. Twice, she pushed back. Once on the correlation between donations and complaint dismissals. Once regarding Adrian's mediation recording. She independently verified both before accepting them. She was not easy. That was exactly what they needed. When the meeting ended, Vanessa closed her notebook, then looked directly at Terrence. "I need time to verify everything and write the story. Don't speak publicly until it runs." Terrence nodded. "How bad is it?" Vanessa looked toward the stack of documents. The worst kind of bad. She paused. The documented kind. She left with the evidence. When her article was finally published, Terrence read it at his kitchen table, while his coffee slowly cooled. The headline appeared across the newspaper's digital front page in plain black letters. Caldwell University's Conduct Office. A paper trail of donor influence and dismissed complaints. Vanessa had written it without drama. That made it more devastating. Every fact sourced. Every date verified. The Whitmore donation timeline displayed in a simple table that required almost no interpretation. Adrian Morales participated publicly with his permission. The edited video was compared in precise detail with the complete recordings. 7 complaints, 7 dismissals, 1 donor family, 1 done. Regional television stations quickly arrived. Reporters stood across the Caldwell quad with cameras. The university communications office released a statement repeatedly promising a thorough review, while saying almost nothing meaningful. Sigma Alpha Kappa's national organization released another statement condemning harassment in general. Garrett Whitmore was not mentioned by name. His personal social media accounts were flooded. I made them private. Reed Ellison deleted his accounts entirely. Higher education publications across the country began republishing Vanessa's investigation. Then something happened quietly, without public announcement, without apology, without acknowledgement that the hold had ever existed. The restrictions on Terrence's academic records disappeared. An email arrived from the registrar. Mr. Cole, all administrative holds on your academic records have been resolved. Your official transcripts are available for release upon request. That was all. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the cost, or what Terrence had been forced to do to make the hold disappear. He drove back to Caldwell, returned to the same registrar's counter. Mrs. Marjorie Kent processed his request while avoiding his eyes. Terrence stood in the same place where she had originally told him about the conduct hold, then watched her slide a sealed transcript envelope across the counter. Terrence carried it outside. In the parking lot, he held it between both hands for a long moment. Cool air against his face. He texted Keller and Associates, official transcripts being sent tomorrow. The answer came quickly. Perfect. We'll see you in 6 weeks. Terrence slowly exhaled. He finally had what he had returned to Caldwell for. But standing in the visitor lot with the sealed envelope in his hands, he thought about Adrian Morales. 2 years in Ohio, a banker's box on a shelf, waiting for someone to call. Terrence thought about the students before Adrian, then the next student, and the one after that. He climbed into his car, sat quietly, then called Dr. Prescott. Terrence was preparing his transcript envelope for overnight delivery when another university message arrived. For the first time since the situation began, the tightness inside his chest had started to ease. Then his phone buzzed. University-wide communication from Caldwell's president, Dr. Harrison Franklin. The subject line promised Caldwell University's commitment to campus climate. The first paragraph expressed deep concern. The next announced a blue-ribbon campus climate task force. The task force would conduct a comprehensive review of conduct procedures following recent media attention. Then, buried beneath the polished institutional language came the crucial sentence. All active investigative findings would be placed on administrative hold during the task force review. Review period, 90 days. Terrence read the sentence repeatedly, then called Dr. Prescott. She answered immediately, meaning she had already seen it. I see it, she said. Her voice was unusually flat. Tight. 90 days, Terrence said. I know. That goes beyond the end of the semester. I know, Terrence. He walked toward his apartment window, looked down at the Atlanta street. The sealed transcript envelope remained on the table behind him. Garrett graduates before then. If everything stays on hold, he walks. Dr. Prescott finished the thought. Clean record. Law school admission intact. His father sitting in the front row. The full architecture of what Caldwell had done settled over Terrence like something cold. The university had not denied Vanessa's reporting. It had not needed to. Instead, Caldwell simply moved the finish line, absorbed the scandal, issued statements, packed with words like thorough, comprehensive, and committed. Then quietly built a 90-day wall between Garrett Whitmore III and consequences that could actually affect him. Terrence's transcript hold had disappeared. That battle was won. Now he understood why the university had released the record so quickly and quietly. His case had become too visible, too easy to point toward. But the deeper investigation, the 7 complaints, Dean Langley's pattern, all of it had been hidden behind a task force designed to produce some future report after public attention moved elsewhere. Terrence's phone buzzed. Vanessa Carlyle. He answered. "I know you saw it," she said. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you more clearly. This is what universities do. They don't fight the story. They wait it out." Her frustration told Terrence she had watched institutions use the same strategy before. A task force is a clock, Terrence. It runs until the cameras leave, until the public forgets, until the powerful people safely cross the finish line. "Who chairs the task force?" Terrence asked. A brief pause. "I'm still confirming, but a source tells me at least 2 members have received Whitmore Family Foundation research grants." Terrence closed his eyes. Langley? Still in his office, still handling conduct cases. Terrence thanked her, ended the call, then sat at his kitchen table. The transcript envelope sat directly in front of him, sealed, addressed, his ticket out, everything he had originally returned to Caldwell to obtain. I thought about Adrian Morales. 2 years waiting in Ohio. I thought about the 6 complainants before Adrian, each dismissed quietly, efficiently, with donor money flowing nearby. I thought about the next student, whoever that person might be, someone who would walk across the wrong part of the South Quad and potentially spend years explaining a conduct notation to hiring managers. The Keller address stared up from the envelope. 6 weeks, a career. Everything he had worked toward. Terrence had what he came for. He could walk away. Nobody reasonable would blame him. He sat with that thought, then picked up his phone, called Dr. Prescott. "I'm not finished." Silence followed briefly. Then, "I was hoping you'd say that." Terrence drove to Caldwell's wrestling facility before sunrise. He had not intentionally planned it. He simply found himself traveling the familiar road, headlights cutting through darkness, turning toward the athletic complex out of something deeper than conscious thought. Muscle memory, the instinct of a man who had always done his clearest thinking near a wrestling mat. Coach Bishop's truck was already parked outside. It always seemed to be. Terrence remained inside his car and looked toward the light glowing from one facility window. One steady yellow rectangle in the darkness. He had seen that light hundreds of times, before early practices, before championships, before the hardest matches of his life. Moments when he sat exactly like this, reminding himself what he was preparing to walk into. He stepped out, knocked. Coach Bishop opened the door wearing practice clothes and holding 2 coffee mugs, almost as though he had seen Terrence's headlights and prepared the coffee before Terrence even reached the entrance. "Figured it was you." He handed Terrence 1 mug. "Come inside." The facility smelled exactly the same. Rubber mats, chalk, dust, the particular clean sweat of a room that had absorbed thousands of hours of difficult work. The overhead lights were low, the wrestling mats empty. Terrence's senior championship banner still hung slightly crooked from the wall, exactly as it always had. They sat in Coach Bishop's office. Terrence wrapped both hands around the warm mug, then explained everything. The task force, the 90-day delay, the Whitmore Foundation grants, Langley still working inside the conduct office, Garrett potentially graduating with a clean record before consequences arrived. Coach Bishop listened without interrupting. That had always been one of the qualities Terrence respected most about him. The coach listened the same way Dr. Prescott did, completely, without performing emotion. When Terrence finished, Bishop remained quiet. "So the university is the wall." "Yes, and every door inside that wall leads back to Whitmore money. Every one." Coach Bishop placed the mug down, leaned back, looked toward the ceiling, like a man making calculations. "You know what you never do in wrestling?" Terrence looked at him. "You never drive directly into a defended position." Bishop leaned forward. "When your opponent has his base set, his weight forward, and he's ready for everything you're bringing straight at him, you don't keep pushing through his strongest point. You find where the base is weakest, and you apply pressure there." He paused. "Caldwell's base is Whitmore money. You can't attack that effectively from inside the university. So where is their base unprotected?" Terrence stared at his coffee, then slowly straightened. "Three places." Coach Bishop watched him. "Three institutions with their own liability, and no reason to protect Garrett Whitmore or his family." Terrence began counting. The law school Garrett is supposed to attend. They train future attorneys. They answer to professional ethics standards and bar admission character requirements, not Caldwell donors. Second, Sigma Alpha Kappa's National Insurance and Legal Organization. If a fraternity chapter deliberately altered evidence for a university conduct proceeding, that creates legal exposure. That's not a public relations issue. That's potentially fraud. Terrence's expression hardened. And third, the state legislature's Education Funding Committee. The Whitmore donations are public records. If state lawmakers see documented evidence showing donor money repeatedly correlating with complaint dismissals at a public university, that becomes a public funding accountability issue. That's their jurisdiction, not President Franklin's. Coach Bishop stared at him for a long moment. "Son," he said quietly, "you just thought like a wrestler." Terrence was already reaching for his phone. He called Dr. Prescott. Together, they spent the weekend building evidence packages. Terrence, Nia, Dr. Prescott, Adrian, participating remotely from Ohio. 3 separate packages, each tailored specifically to the institution receiving it. Every claim sourced, every document organized, every piece of evidence placed exactly where it needed to be. Nia compiled records. Adrian verified information from his files. Dr. Prescott wrote the cover letters with the steady hand of someone who had waited 4 years for the opportunity to write them. Eventually, 3 sealed packages sat together on her conference table. Terrence looked at them. I imagined Garrett Whitmore wearing a graduation gown. He imagined Dean Langley sitting behind his desk, processing complaints, dismissing them, waiting for the clock to run out. "All 3, Terrence said. "Same time." Dr. Prescott nodded. "Same time." The first package went toward Garrett's future law school. Nia submitted it through the proper administrative channel. Inside was a formal cover letter from Dr. Prescott. Clean, professional, carefully factual, no accusation. It simply informed the law school that, as an institution responsible for training future attorneys whose character would eventually be reviewed by bar admission authorities, it might wish to examine documented information regarding one incoming student. Attached were the complete records, the Fraternity Harassment Archive, Adrian Morales documentation, the edited video submitted to Dean Langley, beside the original footage, the 7 complaints, 7 dismissals, Whitmore Family Foundation donation records. The package demanded nothing, asked for nothing. It simply placed the truth inside the correct room, then allowed it to breathe. The law school's ethics office responded quickly. It formally requested Garrett Whitmore III's complete conduct record from Caldwell University. It was not a suggestion. The second pressure point was Sigma Alpha Kappa's national organization. Vanessa Carlisle made contact. She had already begun preparing a follow-up investigation. Her request for comment focused on one narrow issue, not the larger harassment pattern, not the donations. The edited video. A video intentionally shortened to remove evidence, showing that Terrence had been attacked first, then submitted as evidence in a formal conduct proceeding. The complete original footage was available for direct comparison. Vanessa sent her questions to Sigma Alpha Kappa's National Communications Office. The public relations team did not respond first. Their attorneys did. That told Vanessa everything she needed to know about how seriously they viewed the matter. Conversations between national fraternity lawyers and Caldwell University lawyers followed. According to someone familiar with them, they were not pleasant. Soon afterward, Sigma Alpha Kappa National suspended the Caldwell chapter, pending immediate review. All activities, recruitment, operations. The large fraternity house on the edge of the quad became quiet. The third pressure point was the state legislature. Dr. Prescott contacted someone she had known professionally for years, a colleague serving on the state's Higher Education Advisory Board. I understood immediately what the Whitmore donation records looked like when placed beside years of dismissed conduct complaints. That person contacted a state legislator serving on an education funding committee, a legislator already interested in documented evidence of donor influence over disciplinary proceedings at public universities. A formal inquiry reached President Franklin's office. It demanded records relating to Sigma Alpha Kappa conduct cases over several years. It also requested the Whitmore Family Foundation's university financial transactions across the same period. The inquiry became public record immediately. Vanessa published the development. Terence was at home when her article appeared. He read it, standing at his kitchen counter without taking off his jacket. His phone began buzzing almost immediately. Dr. Prescott, Nia. Then Adrian. Adrian's message contained only 4 words. "Brother, you did it." Terence lowered the phone. He looked toward the Keller envelope on his table, his transcript inside. The engineering career waiting 6 weeks away. 3 letters. 3 pressure points. 3 outside institutions with their own responsibility, and absolutely no reason to protect the Whitmore family from documented facts. Terence thought about Coach Bishop sitting in the wrestling facility before sunrise. When you can't go through your opponent, go around his base. Terence finally removed his jacket. The university's foundation was already beginning to shift. Caldwell's president arrived at his office and discovered 3 separate problems waiting. Each represented a kind of pressure the university had never been forced to confront simultaneously. The law school ethics inquiry, Sigma Alpha Kappa National's attorneys, the state legislature's formal records demand. The president closed his office door. Whatever happened inside over the following hours, the results came quickly. The university amended the task force charter. The administrative delay on investigative findings was eliminated. The conduct investigation was removed entirely from Dean Langley's control. An independent external investigator was appointed jointly by Caldwell's governing board and state education authorities. The investigator had no professional connection to Caldwell's administration, no Whitmore Family Foundation grants, no incentive to protect anyone except the truth. Prescott read the revised document, sat quietly for a long moment, then called Terence. "It's moving." "How fast?" "Fast enough." The outside investigator worked like someone with nothing to protect and a deadline to meet. Dean Everett Langley was placed on paid administrative leave while his previous conduct decisions were reviewed. His office was emptied. Staff members were reassigned. The world's okayest administrator mug disappeared from the reception desk along with everything else. Langley said nothing publicly. His attorney issued a brief statement that explained nothing and satisfied nobody. Garrett Whitmore III received notice that his graduation had been placed on hold pending the investigation. He would not walk with his class. His law school enrollment was deferred while the school conducted conducted its own ethical review. The acceptance letter Garrett's father had proudly framed inside their home was no longer a certainty. Garrett's attorney released a statement. It called him the victim of a coordinated campaign intended to destroy his reputation. The statement used phrases such as defamatory, politically motivated, and due process. Few people who had read Vanessa Carlisle's documented reporting found the defense convincing. Garrett's father repeatedly tried to reach President Franklin personally. For the first time, the president did not take his calls. An assistant returned them. That had never happened before. Reed Ellison received a formal investigative finding regarding the altered video. The outside investigator concluded that the footage submitted to Dean Langley had been deliberately edited. It began only after the physical provocation against Terrence. Context establishing what caused Terrence's response had been removed. The official finding used words like intentional, misleading, evidence tampering in a formal conduct proceeding. That finding became part of Reed's academic record permanently. He faced suspension. The social media accounts he had spent years building, the accounts he used to turn other people's humiliation into entertainment, had already vanished. Deleted quietly. Once Reed understood which direction the story was moving, the accounts disappeared. The institutional record did not. Blake Harlan's partial athletic scholarship also came under review. With the university now facing intense scrutiny, the athletic department declined to renew it. Blake received the decision by email. I had no attorney, no wealthy family foundation, nobody powerful to call. Sigma Alpha Kappa's national organization ultimately revoked Caldwell's chapter permanently. The enormous Fraternity house, with white columns and Greek letters, the building that had sat proudly at the edge of the quad for decades, returned to university control. Caldwell's board voted on what would happen to the building. The vote was unanimous. Its new purpose, the Caldwell Center for First-Generation Students. When Nia texted Terrence the news, he read the message twice, then placed his phone face down. He sat quietly. That house, that specific ground, those front steps, the place where someone had thrown a cup against the back of his head. Now it would become a place designed to support people, rather than tear them down. Terrence picked up the phone again. He messaged Adrian. They're turning the SAK house into a first-generation student center. Adrian replied quickly. Curtis Cole would have loved that. Terrence stared at his father's name. Adrian had never met Curtis Cole. He did not need to. Terrence placed the phone down again, looked through the window, and remained there for a long time. 6 weeks later, Terrence Cole pulled into the parking garage at Keller and Associates. He sat in his car briefly, the same way he used to sit outside the wrestling facility before an important match. Not exactly nervous, simply experiencing the stillness of a man who wanted to be fully present for something he had worked years to reach. The Keller building rose above Midtown Atlanta. Glass, steel, clean lines, serious. Through the lobby windows, Terrence could see a security desk, elevators, professionals moving with purpose, real people, real work, the kind his father had told him education could make possible. Terrence remembered being 9 years old, sitting beside his father on the porch of their home in rural Georgia. Curtis Cole had told him, "They can take a lot from you, son, but they can't take what's inside your head. You earn that, and it belongs to you forever." Terrence stepped out of his car. His official transcripts were already inside Keller's personnel records, sealed, verified, delivered weeks earlier. His diploma was framed on his mother's wall in Georgia because she had asked for it, and Terrence could not bring himself to say no when he heard the emotion in her voice. Keller and Associates' senior partner met him upstairs. James Keller was in his 60s, direct a handshake, the kind of man who looked someone immediately in the eyes and kept looking. He escorted Terence to a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city, then spent roughly 40 minutes explaining Terence's first assignment: structural analysis for a commercial development, load distribution, material stress points, exactly the kind of problem Terence had spent years training to solve. Terence took notes, asked 2 questions, and for the first time in 6 weeks, he felt the ground beneath his feet become completely solid. That evening, Terence called his mother. Nadine answered quickly. She asked about his first day, whether he had eaten lunch, whether his shoes had been comfortable, the strange constellation of questions only mothers asked, questions that really meant, "Are you okay? Are you safe? Are you still my boy?" Terence told her about James Keller, the project, the conference room with Atlanta, spread below the windows. Nadine listened, completely, without interrupting. When Terence finished, she remained quiet, then said softly, "Baby, you sound like your daddy used to sound after he won something." Terence leaned against his kitchen counter. "Tell me what he used to say." He had heard the words countless times, but hearing them through his mother's voice felt different than remembering them alone. "I used to say the system is built by people, and people can be moved." Terence remained silent for a moment. "I was right. Baby, your daddy was always right." She laughed gently. "I was usually just about 10 years ahead of everybody else." Coach Bishop called Terence the following morning. Terence was still in running clothes, coffee in hand, watching Atlanta wake beneath his window. "How was your first day?" Bishop asked. "Good." Terence smiled. "Really good, Coach." "Good." Then came the kind of pause that meant Coach Bishop had something specific to say. "I want you to know something. I had jersey number 44 mounted in the display case outside the wrestling room." "Your jersey?" "I framed it myself." Terence said nothing for a moment. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I want you to understand that this university remembers you correctly," Bishop said. His voice remained quiet, certain, whatever it took, however long it took. "It remembers you correctly now." Another pause. "Your father would have driven all the way up here to see that jersey." Terence turned away from the window, pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of his nose, held them there briefly. "Thank you, Coach." Dr. Prescott sent him an email later. No greeting, no signature. 2 sentences. "The First Generation Center opens soon. I've been asked to join the programming board." And I said yes. Terence read the message twice, then replied with 4 words. "Send me the donation link." He pressed send, set his phone down, looked around the small apartment, sparse, clean, a life only beginning to fill itself in. Terence was not completely healed from everything the previous 6 weeks had cost him, but he was standing. After everything, standing felt like enough. Several months later, Terence returned to Caldwell University, not because he needed to, because he chose to. Dr. Prescott had asked him to speak at the opening of the Caldwell Center for First-Generation Students. She had not pressured him. She simply asked. Terence accepted before she had even finished the sentence. He parked in the visitor lot. The same faded parking lines. For a moment, he remained behind the wheel. The campus looked different in winter. The oak trees were bare, the quad quieter. Students crossed in small groups with their heads lowered against the cold. Terence stepped out and began walking. The building still stood exactly where it always had. Same red brick, same broad steps, same 4 white columns. But the Greek letters were gone. Where they had once hung for decades, there was now smooth white paint. If someone looked closely enough and knew exactly where to look, the faint shadow of the old letters remained beneath the surface, not completely erased, not completely forgotten. simply covered by something better. A new sign hung above the entrance, Caldwell Center for first-generation students. Terence stood at the bottom of the steps, looked at it, then walked inside. The building was alive. Students filled the rooms, mostly freshmen. They carried the particular combination of determination and quiet fear Terence remembered from his own first weeks at Caldwell. Backpacks slightly too heavy, schedules folded into jacket pockets, eyes scanning everything around them, as though they were still trying to determine whether they were truly allowed to be there. Terence knew that feeling intimately. Prescott found him near the entrance. She shook his hand firmly. She looked exactly the same. Blazer, reading glasses, leather portfolio. The calm composure of a woman who had fought long battles quietly and won. Behind her, the center's programming director managed a table filled with informational brochures, scholarship materials, and mentorship applications. Terence spoke for 7 minutes. Around 24 first-generation freshmen sat in folding chairs in front of him. Terence did not tell them college would be easy. He did not tell them institutions were automatically fair. He did not tell them that following every rule guaranteed protection. He told them to document everything. Dates, times, names, exact words. He told them to find their Dr. Prescott early, that professor inside every department who truly saw students like them, who fought quietly, who understood. I told them to build their own NIAS, friends who arrived carrying laptops, information, and a stubborn refusal to let injustice disappear undocumented. He told them about Adrian Morales, about a banker's box sitting on a shelf in Ohio, about a man who kept every receipt for 2 years because his grandfather had taught him that truth needed both a voice and evidence. Terence looked around the room. This building used to be a place that decided who belonged here and who didn't. Now it belongs to you, every one of you. He paused. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if they try, document it. Build your team and push back with everything you have. The room remained completely silent after he finished. Later, a student approached Terence near the doorway. A large young man, heavy-set, broad shoulders, the kind of body that caused people to make assumptions before he spoke. He had careful eyes, watchful, the eyes of someone who had already learned to study a room before entering it. Mr. Cole? Yes, I'm studying engineering. Good, Terence said. Strong program. The student slowly nodded, then hesitated. Were you scared when everything happened? Terence looked at him, really looked, at the controlled expression, at the question underneath the actual words. I was tired, Terence said honestly. Tired of being careful for people who were never careful with me. He paused, and then I stopped. The young man absorbed the answer slowly. The way people absorb something true. Terence shook his hand, held it slightly longer than a casual handshake, then turned and walked through the building's front doors into the cold afternoon. He did not look back. He did not need to. Behind him, through the open doors, the voices of first-generation students filled rooms where cruelty had once lived. Conversation, movement, the specific, irreplaceable sound of people who had been told they did not belong, deciding together that they did. Terence pulled his jacket closer against the cold, then walked toward his car. He had a structural analysis due soon. I had work to do. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. On the screen, I've selected 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.